On October 30th, 2017, I was flying home from speaking on a tour with the band Mercy Me. Every night, they would sing this song, Even If. I know you're able and I know you can. Save through the fire with your mighty hand. But even if you don't, my hope is you alone. I would typically always take an Uber from BWI when I land, but on this day, I remember texting my wife and her offering to pick me up so we could go to lunch with our daughter. While our son was at school, my wife arrived at the airport and I jumped in the car and we headed towards home. On the drive, we received this call from my cousin telling us that within the last 40 minutes, our whole house had exploded and had burned to the ground. I remember feeling really helpless that day. Our son and daughter are both adopted from Africa, and they carry with them this story of trauma and loss and grief already. And now I found myself in a situation where I didn't even know where their clothes would come from to wear to school on the next day. The loss of our home and all of our belongings became a symbol of the deconstruction of our faith. It took us down a path of doubt and fear and wandering. But as we stood in shock, we watched as the church wrapped their arms around our family. Within 2 hours of us losing everything, people began dropping off clothes for our children, providing meals for our family, offering places for us to stay, and donating finances so we could begin to rebuild the pieces of our lives. This ultimately is what gave us hope and kept our eyes on Jesus. I took a few weeks off from touring following the fire, and I tried to use that time to be a support for my wife and children, as well as sort through the insurance details and the investigation into the company that had incorrectly installed the wood stove in our home, which had resulted in the fire. Whenever an emotion would arise regarding our situation, I would stuff it back down because I felt like I needed to be the one to carry the pain for our family. This worked fine until the first time that I boarded a plane following the event. I remember being on the tarmac and thinking I was having a heart attack. I couldn't breathe, my chest was pounding, and I was filled with fear about leaving home. I later learned that this was a panic attack triggered by being in the same location where I had learned about the fire. These panic attacks would continue over the next year alongside of major depression. I would be backstage about to speak in front of like 5,000 people in an arena, but I would be curled up on the cold floor of a locker room, unable to move. How could I be surrounded by so many people, but yet feel so alone? How can I find forgiveness for the company that burned my family's house down? How do I even attempt to walk my children through this? And because of my public career, if I seek help, would there be stereotypes and repercussions? These were all questions that were tormenting my mind. Finally, after several months, I reached out to a friend in a ministry called Lights Out, who provides support for touring musicians. He recommended that I speak to a counselor right away. After several counseling sessions, we concluded that there are times when trauma is so deep that you have to seek medical intervention. So for the next year, I would continue meeting regularly with a counselor while also taking prescription medication for anxiety and depression. As much as I'd love to share that this combination of counseling and medication produced an overnight result, it was actually a long journey. The medication helped most of my symptoms, but it also completely killed my creativity. For 12 months, I didn't pick up a guitar, I didn't lead worship, I didn't write a song, I didn't develop any public speaking campaigns. But thankfully, through counseling, I was able to process a lot of the trauma, identify triggers, and take healthy steps to rebuild our home and our lives. I am beyond thrilled to share with you that I have now been prescription-free for 3 months, replacing my medication with natural alternatives. I still have periods of darkness and doubt and depression, but I have a counselor on call at all times, and I have found great freedom in sharing my struggles openly with close family and friends. On the day of the fire, neighbors of ours that are builders came to our property and promised to rebuild our house for us. On Easter weekend, we moved into our new home and we claimed Isaiah 43:19 over our house and our lives. Behold, I am doing a new thing.